My fiancée and her parents publicly mocked my late mother at rehearsal dinner, so I called off the wedding in front of all without a second thought. I'm 33, and until recently, I was engaged to Emma, a woman I honestly thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. I met her about 6 years ago through mutual friends at a cookout. She had this great smile, was quick with a joke, and we just clicked. I didn't think twice when I decided to propose a year ago. It felt like the right time. At the time, I wasn't just marrying Emma, I was also, in a way, marrying her family. Her parents, Richard and Karen, are the kind of people who love to be the center of attention. They're loud, opinionated, and always seem to have a comment about everything. At first, I thought it was just their personality, but over time, I started seeing how their entitlement bled into everything they did. Before we dive into what went down, let me talk about my mom. Her name was Patricia, and she was hands down the best person I've ever known. She passed away 2 years ago after battling cancer for 3 brutal years. Watching her fight that disease and still find ways to put other people first was humbling. She taught me so much about kindness, generosity, and standing up for what's right. My mom wasn't just my rock, she was a lifeline for a lot of people. She had this way of stepping in and helping people without making them feel embarrassed or indebted, like she'd just quietly do what needed to be done. That included Emma's family. Richard and Karen owe so much to her, but you wouldn't know it by how they talk about her now. Back when I first introduced Emma to my mom, it went well enough. My mom liked Emma, she told me so, and Emma seemed polite. But as things got more serious, it became obvious that Emma didn't really get along with my mom. It wasn't anything dramatic, just small comments here and there, like how Emma would call my mom overly involved or a little too eager to help. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I figured it was just nerves, or Emma trying to adjust to being part of a new family. The thing is, my mom did a lot for Emma's family. Years ago, when their restaurant was on the verge of shutting down, my mom co-signed a loan to help them out. No one else would take that risk, but my mom believed in them. She even helped them organize their finances and put together a plan to make the business profitable again, and it worked. The restaurant survived, and Richard and Karen were able to keep their livelihood. But it didn't stop there. When their restaurant's industrial oven broke down, they didn't have the money to replace it. My mom paid for it outright because she didn't want them to lose business. She never asked for the money back, even though she could have used it for her own medical bills later on. That's just who she was. Then there was Emma's older brother, Ryan. He was struggling to finish college because he couldn't afford tuition for his last semester. My mom stepped in and covered the costs so he wouldn't have to drop out. She said, "Education is one thing no one can take away from you." It wasn't just money she gave, it was time and energy. She spent hours helping Emma's family with everything from bookkeeping advice to babysitting Ryan's kids so he could focus on studying. And let me tell you, not once did Richard, Karen, or Ryan ever thank her properly. Sure, they said thanks in passing, but there was no real acknowledgement of what she'd done for them. My mum never cared about that though. She wasn't in it for the recognition, she just wanted to help people. When my mum passed away, I was devastated. She was my world, and losing her felt like a piece of me was gone forever. Emma was there for me during the worst of it, or at least I thought she was. Looking back, I realize a lot of her support was more about doing the bare minimum. She'd say things like, "You need to move on," or "Your mum wouldn't want you to be stuck in grief." Which, yeah, maybe was true, but it didn't feel comforting. It felt dismissive. Leading up to the wedding, I started noticing more red flags. Emma was weirdly dismissive anytime I brought up my mom in conversations about the ceremony. For example, I wanted to include a small tribute to my mom during the vows, and Emma just brushed it off, saying, "Isn't that going to make people sad? Weddings are supposed to be happy." I let it slide because I didn't want to start a fight. But little things like that kept piling up. Then there were the comments from Richard and Karen. They had this way of talking down to me, like they thought Emma was marrying beneath her. Richard once joked about how Emma was upgrading her life by marrying someone from a simpler background. Karen would say things like, "Well, we all make sacrifices for love," as if Emma was doing me a favor by agreeing to marry me. It stung, but I kept my mouth shut for Emma's sake. Looking back now, I wish I'd spoken up sooner. Maybe I could have saved myself some heartache, but I kept telling myself that once the wedding was over and the dust settled, things would get better. I couldn't have been more wrong. So fast forward to about a month before the wedding. That's when things really started to unravel. Like I said earlier, Emma's parents, Richard and Karen, offered to host the rehearsal dinner at this fancy restaurant they had ties to. At first, I thought it was a nice gesture. I figured maybe they were trying to smooth over all the little snide comments and awkward moments we'd had during the wedding planning. I even told myself, maybe this is their way of stepping up and showing some class. Now, a little context about this dinner. Emma's parents didn't just offer to host it, they made a big show of how generous they were being. Karen kept bringing it up in conversations like, "Oh, we've put so much effort into making this rehearsal dinner perfect. It's going to be the talk of the town." Richard, of course, chimed in every chance he got, reminding me and everyone else that the restaurant was one of the best in the area and how we were lucky they were able to secure it. The whole thing started to feel less like a gift and more like an ego boost for them. But whatever, I was focused on making the wedding happen, so I let them take the reins on the rehearsal dinner. Big mistake. As we got closer to the date, Richard and Karen's true colors started to shine through even more. Every conversation with them turned into some kind of backhanded comment or passive-aggressive remark. For example, when I tried to confirm the guest list for the dinner, Karen rolled her eyes and said, "We'll handle it, David. You don't need to stress over the details. Just show up and enjoy." It was such a small thing, but it bugged me. Like, this was supposed to be our event, right? Shouldn't Emma and I have a say in who's coming? Then there was the menu. Karen made this huge deal about how they were curating a high-end dining experience for the night. She kept saying things like, "Oh, we've got the chef to create something really special. Nothing like what you'd normally find back home, David." That last part was her favorite dig. Back home. She loved reminding me that I wasn't from the same social circle as them. I'm from a small, working-class town, and they never let me forget it. I tried to brush it off and focus on the bigger picture. I kept telling myself, it's just one night, smile, nod, and get through it. But even Emma was starting to act weird. She'd always had this habit of siding with her parents on things. But in the weeks leading up to the dinner, it got worse. Anytime I brought up an idea or concern, she'd wave it off and say, "David, you're overthinking this. My parents know what they're doing." The thing is, it wasn't just about the dinner. It was the way they made me feel like an outsider in my own relationship. They treated me like I was lucky to even be in the room. Like I should be grateful that Emma was willing to marry me. And Emma, she never stuck up for me. If anything, she encouraged it by laughing along or dismissing me whenever I tried to bring it up. A week before the dinner, there was this incident that should have been a huge red flag for me. Emma and I were at her parents' house, finalizing some details for the wedding. Karen was in full control mode, flipping through seating charts and floral arrangements like she was planning a royal event. At one point, I made a suggestion about changing the centerpieces to something simpler, something my mom would have loved. Karen didn't even look up from her binder. She just said, "Oh, Patricia had interesting taste, didn't she? But this is Emma's day. Let's keep things modern, shall we?" I froze. It was such a subtle jab, but it hit me hard. Emma didn't say a word. She just kept scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. I wanted to call Karen out right then and there, but I didn't want to start a fight, so I swallowed my pride and stayed quiet. Looking back, I hate that I didn't say something. It's like every little insult and slight was adding up, but I kept brushing it off because I didn't want to rock the boat. I thought I was keeping the peace. The day of the rehearsal dinner finally arrived, and I could already feel the tension in the air. Emma and I drove to the restaurant together, and I tried to make small talk to lighten the mood. She was quiet though, scrolling through her phone and barely responding. When I asked if she was excited, she just shrugged and said, "It's just a dinner, David, don't stress. Just a dinner, right?" When we got to the restaurant, Richard and Karen were already there, acting like they owned the place. Richard was standing by the entrance, shaking hands with guests as they arrived, while Karen was busy giving instructions to the staff. The whole thing felt more like a corporate event than a family gathering. The restaurant
itself was over-the-top fancy. White tablecloths, chandeliers, the whole 9 yards. It was the kind of place that screams, "Look how important we are," and honestly, it just made me feel more out of place. As the guests trickled in, I started noticing something weird. Most of the people there were from Emma's side of the family. There were maybe 3 or 4 people from my side, my dad, my sister, and a couple of close friends and relatives. Everyone else was either a relative of Emma's or one of her parents' business associates. It was like they'd turned the rehearsal dinner into a networking event. I pulled Emma aside and asked her what was going on. "Why aren't more of my family here?" I said. She gave me this exasperated look and said, "David, your family's small. My parents had to fill the room somehow." "It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." That was her answer for everything. I bit my tongue and went back to mingling, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner wasn't about us. It was about Richard and Karen showing off. They'd hijacked what was supposed to be a celebration of our relationship and turned it into their own personal spectacle. After everyone had eaten, the real show started. The speeches. Richard was the first one up, of course. He grabbed the mic like he was giving a keynote address at a conference, not talking about his daughter's wedding. He cleared his throat and started with, "Welcome, everyone. Tonight is about celebrating the union of 2 families, our Emma and, of course, David." He said my name like it left a bad taste in his mouth. I was sitting there, trying to stay calm, but every word out of his mouth was a thinly veiled insult. He started talking about how proud he was of Emma and how she's always been the star of the family. She's always known what she wanted in life and gone after it, and now she's marrying someone who'll keep her grounded. He smirked when he said that, and I swear a couple of people chuckled. I just stared at him, wondering if I'd heard him right. Then he launched into this story about how Emma was always a high achiever, even as a kid, and how it was a good thing she had their guidance to stay on the right track. At one point he said, "You know, we've always taught Emma to aim high, and while David might not be what we envisioned at first," he trailed off, letting the sentence hang like it was supposed to be funny. I could feel my dad and sister glaring at him from across the table. Next up was Karen. She strutted to the mic like she was about to accept an award. Her speech started off okay. She talked about how much she loved Emma and how excited she was for the wedding. But then she started making these little digs about me. She talked about how Emma was the perfect daughter who deserved the best in life and said, hence it's a good thing she's patient because she's taught David so much already. I almost choked on my water. What had Emma taught me? How to bite my tongue while her parents insulted me every chance they got. Then Karen turned to me and said, "Oh, so we're so happy to welcome you into the family, David. It'll be nice to finally have someone who doesn't mind getting their hands dirty, right?" She laughed, and a few of her relatives joined in. I glanced at Emma, hoping she'd step in or at least look uncomfortable, but she was smiling along with them. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Richard got back up to the mic. He clinked his glass and said, "One last thing before we wrap this up. I just want to acknowledge someone who's no longer with us, but played a big role in shaping who David is, his mum, Patricia." For a split second, I thought he might actually say something kind. But no, instead, he said, Patricia was one of a kind. She had a habit of meddling in situations, didn't she? Always had an opinion about how things should be done. He laughed, and Karen chimed in. Oh, she definitely had strong opinions. Remember how she always insisted on helping us even when we didn't ask? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were talking about my mum like she was some nosy neighbor. Richard wasn't done. But in all seriousness, he said, Patricia was a generous woman. She helped us out a lot, sometimes too much, if I'm being honest. He winked like it was some kind of inside joke. The room got quiet, but Richard just kept going. We'll be sure to keep her spirit alive at the wedding. Let's hope David doesn't inherit her enthusiasm for taking charge, though. We wouldn't want him meddling too much, right? That was it. I felt my face get hot, and my fists clenched under the table. I glanced at Emma, waiting for her to say something, anything, to shut them down. But she just laughed and said, "Oh, Dad, stop," like it was all harmless fun. Harmless fun? They were mocking my mum's memory in front of a room full of people, and Emma thought it was funny. I couldn't believe it. The worst part was that Richard and Karen acted like they were being charming. They had this smug look on their faces, like they thought everyone was laughing with them. But when I looked around the room, I could see that wasn't the case. When Richard finally sat down, the tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The clinking of forks and glasses started again. As people awkwardly tried to move on from the train wreck of a speech, Emma leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" Her tone was casual, like she was asking if I wanted more water, not if I was seething with rage. I didn't even look at her. I just nodded, my jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. But then Karen walked over to our table. "David," she said sweetly, "I hope you weren't offended. Richard and I just wanted to add a little humor to the evening. It's all in good fun." That's when something snapped in me. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Are you serious right now?" I said, my voice low but shaking with anger. So there I was, standing in the middle of the rehearsal dinner, chair still slightly tipped back from when I stood up. The whole room had gone dead silent, like someone had muted the TV. All eyes were on me, but I didn't care. My heart was pounding and my face was hot, but I knew I couldn't just let this slide. Richard and Karen's mocking of my mum was already too much. But that fake apology from Karen, that was the final straw. "Are you serious right now?" I repeated, looking directly at Karen. She froze for a second, probably not expecting me to actually call her out. Richard looked up from his drink, like I'd just insulted him. Emma, sitting next to me, whispered, "David, stop," but I ignored her. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice louder now. "You spent the entire night taking cheap shots at my mum, the woman who helped your family when no one else would, and now you're acting like it was just a joke? You think that's okay?" Richard leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Relax, David," he said, smirking like he thought this was no big deal. "You're overreacting. It was all in good fun." "Good fun?" I shot back. "You called her meddling. You said she was too much. You mocked her generosity like it was some kind of flaw. How was that good fun?" The tension in the room was unbearable. I could see a few of Emma's cousins looking down at their plates, clearly uncomfortable. My dad, on the other hand, was staring at Richard like he wanted to punch him. My sister had her arms crossed, glaring at Karen like she was waiting for her turn to jump in. Karen tried to laugh it off. "Oh, David, don't be so sensitive. We were just sharing a few stories. Everyone knows how Patricia liked to take charge." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Take charge?" I said, my voice rising. "She helped you. She saved your business when you were about to lose it. She paid for your oven repairs, your patio remodel, and your son's college tuition. And this is how you repay her? By turning her into some kind of joke at a rehearsal dinner?" Richard sat up straighter, clearly annoyed now. "All right, that's enough," he said, trying to sound authoritative. "We didn't mean any harm, but if you're going to throw a tantrum about it, maybe you're not ready for marriage." That comment showed just how little respect he had for me, or for my mom, for that matter. Emma finally spoke up, tugging on my sleeve. "David, can we just go outside and talk, please?" I pulled my arm away. "No, Emma, we can't. Not until your parents understand how disrespectful they've been." Karen sighed dramatically, like she was the victim in all this. "David, this is supposed to be a happy occasion. You're ruining the evening for everyone." "I'm ruining the evening?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "No, Karen, you ruined it the second you decided to trash my mom in front of everyone. And Emma, you just sat there and let it happen." Emma's face turned red. "I didn't know they were going to say all that," she said defensively. "But you laughed," I shot back. "You laughed at every single insult. You didn't even try to stop them." At this point, the whispers in the room started picking up. People were leaning over to each other, murmuring about the scene unfolding in front of them. I could feel the weight of their stares, but I didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about standing up for my mom. Richard stood up, clearly fed up. "All right, David, if you're so offended, maybe you should leave," he said, pointing toward the door. For a moment, I considered it. I thought about just walking out, leaving them to their perfect little dinner. But then I looked around the room, at my dad, my sister, my few friends who had come to support me. They were all watching, waiting to see what I'd do, and I realized I wasn't going to let Richard and Karen get away with it. Not this time. I'm talking about the locket my mum left me. It's gone. "You're the only person who's been in my apartment recently. Did you take it?" She didn't respond right away, but when she did, her message made my blood boil. "I borrowed it because I wanted to keep a piece of her with me. I thought it would help me feel closer to you." "Borrowed?" She borrowed it, without asking, without even telling me. I couldn't believe the audacity. I called her immediately. When she picked up, she sounded defensive, like she was the victim in all of this. "David, it's not a big deal," she said. "I was going to give it back." "Not a big deal?" I snapped. "That locket has been in my family for generations. It's not some trinket you can just take because you feel like it. How could you even think that was okay?" "I just wanted to feel connected to you," she said, her voice trembling like she was trying to play the sympathy card. "I didn't think you'd notice." "Of course I'd notice," I shouted. "It's my mum's, and the fact that you didn't think to ask me first makes it even worse." She started crying at that point, but I wasn't in the mood to comfort her. "Where is it?" I demanded. "It's at my parents' house," she admitted through sobs. I didn't want to lose it, so I left it there for safekeeping. That was the last straw. You took something that didn't belong to you, something that means more to me than you'll ever understand, and you just left it at your parents' house? Are you kidding me?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry doesn't cut it," I said, my voice cold. "I'm coming to get it now." An hour later, I was pulling up to Richard and Karen's house. My anger had only grown during the drive, and by the time I knocked on the door, I was ready to explode. Karen opened it, her fake sweet smile fading when she saw the look on my face. "David," she said cautiously, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here to get my mum's locket," I said bluntly. "Emma told me it's here." Karen's face shifted into a mix of confusion and annoyance. "Emma took a locket? Why would she?" "Just get it," I interrupted. She narrowed her eyes but stepped aside to let me in. A few minutes later, Emma came downstairs holding the locket in her hand. Her eyes were red and her face was blotchy, but I didn't care. All I saw was the locket dangling from her fingers, like it was nothing. "Tear here," she said, holding it out to me. I snatched it from her hand and inspected it, making sure it was the same one. When I was satisfied, I stuffed it in my pocket and turned to leave. "Oh, David, wait," she said, her voice desperate. "Fright, I didn't mean to upset you. I was just trying to." "Save it," I said, cutting her off. "Connie's you stole from me, Emma, from my mom. Like, what you'd already done wasn't enough." Her face crumpled and she started crying again. But I didn't stop. I walked out the door, slamming it behind me. In the days that followed, I blocked her number, deleted her messages, and cut off every possible way for her to contact me. I was done with her family, and all the drama they brought into my life. Calling off the wedding had been hard, but this was the final nail in the coffin, and as tiring as it was, it also felt like closure. I'd stood up for myself, for my mum, and for the values she'd instilled in me. I knew I'd made the right choice, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace.